So what is the situation with fuel? We need to clarify a few things. So last 2 weeks, the government decided to implement a levy, 1 CD per liter, to help deal with doomsday, apparently to help buy power, as in to buy fuel to power some of our plants, and also to help deal with energy sector debts. That was resisted by the minority in parliament, but the matter was passed nonetheless. Then the COMAC, which is the Chamber of Petroleum Marketing Companies, complained about the hasty passage and said they didn't think it would be right to implement this last week, Monday, which was 9th. So the government announced it was going to implement the 1 CD levy per liter today, the 16th. Over the weekend, tensions in the Middle East escalated, and the Israeli and Iranian governments have been basically at a war of words, which has led to shelling of each other's things. Bloomberg News is now reporting that oil prices have started inching upwards. Now, then, when the government announced the increase, they said that because the cedi had appreciated against the dollar, there was already some reprieve in the ex-pump price of fuel. So they felt that 1 cedi per liter was not going to take things too high, because we had already made some savings. Because let me just explain the way this works. Ghana produces a little bit of crude oil, which we sell because we don't own a lot of it. So the people who produce it sell it to China, to Europe, to wherever, and they don't give any to Tor. So we then go back to Europe and buy finished products, whether it's diesel or petroleum for super, which is dependent on the dollar. So what happens is that our bulk, they call them BDCs, go to the central bank for US dollars to procure finished product that we use in our cars and use to power our plants. So that's the basic economics we do. Now, that's very dollar sensitive. So the more the cedi depreciates against the dollar, the more we pay for fuel. Because then if you needed 10 cedis to buy $1 and it goes to 15, that 15 cedis to buy $1 means that the price of the petroleum that you are using is more expensive for the BDC. So fuel prices in Ghana are very sensitive to the currency. So when the currency gets stronger, fuel prices are supposed to come down, which is what we're hoping to see. But in the build up to the cost of fuel, there's also the cost of crude, which is the base sort of number. So we have been in an era of stable crude prices and then an appreciating domestic currency. So that has meant that we will have relatively cheaper fuel to buy. And indeed, some OMCs were selling fuel even below 11, 12 cedis per liter. So then when the government decided to increase or to impose that levy, it was in a time of lower fuel prices. But now that this Middle Eastern tension has begun and the base price, which is the price of crude, has started inching up, the government is now saying they want to suspend the implementation of the levy and monitor the situation in the Middle East. Now, that's where we are. Those are the basic facts. I don't know if I've missed out anything. The High Street Journal did some interesting analysis. If you can just read some of the highlights for me. They spoke to Professor William Baboate and a few other people who have asked that Ghana keeps a close eye on the developments in the Middle East. And by the way, Iran, the Middle East is a very interesting place. There's always tension there on two levels. The Israelis and their Arab neighbors are always fighting, the Palestine being the sort of the main point of anger. But there's also Israel and Hezbollah, Israel and Hamas, and these are two groups in neighboring countries, one in Lebanon, the other in Jordan, and one in Syria, that Israel always has issues with. Then there's also Israel's historic tensions with Tehran. All right, now we need to explain that the Middle East itself has another fault line where there are two main Arab groups, the Shiite and the Sunnis. So the most powerful Sunni nation is Saudi Arabia, which has a very strange relationship with Israel because Saudi is probably the US closest ally in the Middle East because of its oil riches. So, President Trump, even in this first iteration, went to Saudi Arabia a lot. Now, there's also a historic tension between Iran and Saudi Arabia because Iran is the most powerful Shiite nation and Saudi Arabia is the most powerful Sunni nation. And so that tension is there as well. So, for example, in the past, when Qatar started having good relations with Iran, some of the Sunni nations were not happy and attempted to even boycott Al Jazeera, which is owned by the Qatari state, because they felt that why is our cousin going to
There
talk
was
to?
even a blockade on Qatar, making it very difficult for them to do things for a while.
So we are explaining what's going on. So now that, and again, the other point is that the Middle East produces a lot of our oil. 1/3 of global crude oil is produced in that zone. So each time there's a war, whether it's Iraq or Iran or Saudi or wherever, there's a problem. So once there's a fight between Israel and Iran, it's going to affect global production. Even if it will not affect it directly, it will affect the price, because the outlook becomes, oil can become more scarce. Oil prices are doing around $75 per barrel. During the first Gulf War in 91, oil prices went above $100 a barrel. So when the US launched their war on terror, oil prices also went above $100 a barrel. When oil crude price go above $100 a barrel, it affects everything. So this is where we are. So on one hand, global leaders are trying to move away from fossil fuels. So if you look at the EU and all these people, they're talking about why we should go green, why we should need solar, why we should go for EV.
Right.
And we think that's the right idea, because the petrodollar has not helped us. Our dependence on crude has not been good. And there's also a slight divide, because in the Republican group, the Trump people believe in drill. So they prefer to use more fossil fuels because they also have a lot of oil reserves. All right. And then, of course, the recent tensions means that Ghanaians may have to start paying more for finished product if the trend in oil price increases goes up. Now, let me bring in Nana Amoesi. Is it V, the fifth? Or VI? VI. That's the seventh.
Actually, yeah.
VI, the seventh.
I.
VII.
Yes, please.
So that's the seventh. Okay. Nana Amoesi, the seventh, who is the chief executive of IES, Institute of Energy Security, to help us understand this confusion that I'm trying to explain. Nana Amoesi, the seventh, thank you for joining us to talk about this matter. Good morning.
Good morning to you, my brother Bernard, and to your listeners.
We can't catch a break, can we? When we just had a period of relatively stable fuel prices coming down, even tempting government to want to impose the levy, then Iran and Israel have started their thing. Historically, what have Middle Eastern tensions meant for the fuel market generally?
Well, Bernard, like I said, just when we thought that we have some stability in prices, or we're going to see more of drops in domestic fuel prices, a few moments later, an issue outside our domain is seeking to change the narrative or the equation. Yes, the Middle East in particular is a hub of fuel supply and a major hub. It controls close to 45% of the oil that is produced on a daily basis on the world market. And so any challenge, tension that erupts in that space has a tendency to impact on the amount of oil that can be produced. And let's say, for instance, between Iran and the Palestinians, Iran produces oil, and it's quite huge because it sits within the Middle East. And so when this war picks up, the production platform most of the time becomes a target for the tension or for the war. And so they are forced to evacuate some of their stuff. They are forced to shut down some of the production fields that they cannot protect immediately. And that means that we've had a squeeze in terms of the supply that they can put on the world market. Beyond the production, it is also a major route for vessels that move from even Asia to Africa and from Russia to Africa. And so you may have the Suez Canal as a point. You have other choke points around Abu Dhabi. Vessels use that route. And so should there be a tension between neighbors there, vessels that, transit this route are very careful. So they are not caught in the tension. And so they cease movement, vessels don't move. And that also means that we are going to see a squeeze in how much oil that's going to place on the market. So in terms of production and the shipments of oil, the Middle East plays a key role. And so if there is tension, then we have wahala.
As we speak, oil prices are trading between $74 and $75 a barrel. How quickly do you expect the prices to go up in the coming weeks? What length of time would it take for us to start feeling the pinch?
Well, I'm sure within the next 2 weeks we'll feel it directly. Currently, we are not going to see any prices go up on the domestic markets because it is happening over the last 2 weeks that is depicting what prices should be today for the next 2 weeks. Over the last 2 weeks, August prices dropped. That is why LPG price may have to fall. And with Platts prices, that benchmark, there was also some stability. The cedi behaved a bit well against the dollar. And so we're going to see stability or some drop in fuel prices from today going forward. However, because prices have started rocketing on the world markets with gauge Platts is rising. Crude oil price using the Brent benchmark, we're seeing it rise to close to 74.2 this morning. As you mentioned, it means that we must brace ourselves for a possible hike in fuel prices over the next 2 weeks. For how long this will stay and how we can manage, we have little to do, or we have little to do to change the narrative. We don't control the tension out there. You can only pray and ask God that it dampens so that they go back to some normalcy. But it's possible that prices will still drop because if negotiation between the two parties is enhanced, then the war is dampened and price may begin to see some.
Do you understand why the government decided to suspend the so-called D-levy on the basis of these 2-3 days of tensions? I think we're on the 4th day. Do you understand? Because the reason we were given officially was that they think that the prices would go up and that the levy would then affect people adversely. Is that a well-considered sort of decision?
Yeah, of course it's a smart move. The prices of our fuel is not just dictated by world market prices. It is also influenced by the margins, the taxes, the levies that are imposed or are intended to be imposed on the products. And so clearly government sees that price is going to go up in the coming weeks based on world market happenings. Should they slap this one cedi, the gain that we should have experienced from the last 2 weeks happenings will be eroded. Prices will go up automatically. Should they impose it today, it will go up. The next 2 weeks, it is also likely that price will go up again. And so that's a goodwill that they've earned, even though it's been dampened a bit with the introduction of this one cedi. The goodwill will see, more dip, and it will be more negative for them. I'm sure that's why they found some common sense to suspend the levy, because automatically it will increase fuel price should they impose.
What then happens to all the things they said they wanted to do? They said we needed to procure fuel to power our plants to prevent doomsday, and that we also needed to pay some debts that are accumulated within the power sector. Those seemed pretty urgent at the time this was announced. So now that this has been suspended, does that mean then that our power sector is going to get into crisis? Because the way the minister presented this, when I interviewed him, I think 2 weeks ago, he said we desperately need money to procure some fuel to power some of our plants. I'm not sure that has changed.
Oh, it hasn't changed, Bernard. It stays the same. So it means that they have to find probably extra money to procure the fuel. What government has not done well with is to keep some stock, adequate stock of fuel, both for power plants and for the normal consumption, for normal domestic consumption, for drivers, for farmers and all that. If you go into the tanks of the power plants, yes, there are some stock of fuel, but it's not really high. I'm sure they were waiting to see some revenue coming through this one Ghana city levy so they could shore it up. But they could still have stopped some of these products in the bus system. Today, strategic fuel stock for bus is non-existent. And so anything that happens on the world market, we bear it directly. We have nothing to fall on. We have not seen, and we may not see a higher price in the next window because some BDCs have stocks bought over the past 2-3 weeks. We could even have some relief because of this stocking. But then entities like Boss and Tor, if they are not really considered in the equation of energy or fuel supply, then we have security issues to deal with.
Have you heard anything from the new government to suggest that the fortunes of these two entities, Bost, which stores, and Tor, which processes, will change? Because as you've told me many, many times in the past, the long-term strategy for Ghana should include a refining of some of our crude here. For security reasons, we shouldn't be depending on any finished products. Luckily, we have oil fields that are producing crude oil, and we have an oil refinery, one publicly owned one, and there's also a CEN 201. Have you heard anything that suggests that within the next year or two, we will be processing any of our crude domestically?
Well, we have received indication, for instance, for Tor, that government is trying to secure for them crude supply. What they need to do is to bring up the two key refinery units, the RFCC, the residual crude catalytic cracker, and also bring back the primary units, the crude distillation units. Then, of course, they have some guarantee of supply of crude so that they could crack it on tolling basis, not on their books. Somebody brings it in, and then they refine at a fee. And so today, I understand that they put in place a turnaround team that was commissioned last 2 weeks to start working. And the plan is that they should bring up the two units, or at least the crude distillation unit, the primary one, latest the next 3 months. They should bring it online so that they begin to take advantage of the secured crude supply. That is what they need to do for as a country. This is the indication we have received. For Bost, we don't have clarity. Yes, the indication is clear. They are seeking to enhance on the storage and transportation infrastructure. But for the strategic fuel stock, it is hinged on the availability of LECAN, that window of opportunity, that period that is created for a vessel to come in and discharge. We get an indication from IES that they are struggling with LECAN, and that the president has handled on the issue and is seeking to resolve that. If that is done, then of course some level of supply security is achieved.
All right. Nana, thank you so much for your insights as ever. Nana Amoesi the 7th is the Chief Executive or Executive Director of the IES, which is the Institute for Energy Security, that we will not see an immediate impact on export prices. But if the tensions continue and the fight continues, that could lead to, at least in the next couple of weeks, some challenges with pricing. 8:50, what are your thoughts?